Hey everyone, this is Joe, and in today's video I want to talk about sacred duality and reconciliation of apparent opposites, especially as it applies to this particular duality of free speech versus the power of language and choosing your words carefully. So, in my opinion, this is something that just very few people on either the left or the right politically really get right. And that almost everyone involved in politics is just really far on one side of this spectrum. And that I think that true wisdom is about being able to reconcile apparent opposites, right? It's the sacred duality is about integration and reconciliation of apparent opposites, right? So, for example, like the masculine and the feminine, right? If we just look at face value at the masculine versus the feminine, we would say, well, men want something different than what women want, right? And then, in the whole online ecosystem, you get these red pillars who only care about what men want, and then you get extreme feminists who only care about what women want, but those who have true wisdom understand that the magic actually happens when the masculine and feminine come together. That even though masculine and feminine seem to be opposites, masculine and feminine are actually like two sides of a coin, and all the true power happens when they come together. And I think this is the same thing here with free speech, but also choosing your words carefully and understanding the power of language. So, when it comes to reconciling apparent opposites, what does this mean, right? To me, this doesn't necessarily mean that we just are just moderate and we just split everything down the middle, right? So, sacred duality is not necessarily about moderation. It's not necessarily about centrism, right? It's actually about transcending, and it's about incorporating the best aspects of each perspective into a more unified and balanced perspective. So I think, you know, with both of these, we want to understand what happens when they get kind of taken too far, when they get taken to extremes, and they become used for the justification of things that are not ideal, right? And I really could start with either side of this, but you know, why don't we just start with the choosing your words carefully side and think, how does that get taken too far, right? Well, this side of this duality, it's more associated with the left wing, right? So it's like normally it's liberals who kind of want us to be very careful about what we say and who want us to be very sensitive, right? And what happens when that becomes corrupt, when that gets taken to extremes? Well, we end up things with like too much political correctness, where everyone kind of has to walk on eggshells about what they say. We end up with censorship, where we're just banning people's YouTube channels all over the place, and not even just censorship, but we end up with like censorship of like mainstream conservative perspectives, censorship of anyone who questions the liberal narrative, right? We end up with cancel culture. Instead of trying to debate ideas, instead of saying, oh, this is someone I disagree with, let me present a better perspective. Let me win this argument with words. No, I'm just going to try to cancel them. I'm just going to try to take away their platform. And then we can end up kind of with authoritarianism, right? And like, I think during COVID, we kind of saw quite a bit of like left-wing authoritarianism, where the liberal perspective on COVID was obviously it was presented as oh, well, this is science, right? But the truth is that a lot of liberal ideology kind of influenced this perspective, and then it was implemented in a kind of top-down manner. Now, again, some people are going to disagree with that, but I think when this sort of liberalism gets taken to an extreme, it becomes authoritarian to a degree. Now, authoritarianism can happen on the right as well, right? But okay, so like that's what happens when sort of sensitivity gets taken too far, right? But on the other hand, what happens when free speech gets kind of taken to an extreme? And what happens when free speech gets taken to an extreme is that it's used to justify hurtful language, harassment, divisiveness, racism, and sexism. And, I'm not talking about the liberal perspective where it's like these terms kind of get thrown around and just very carelessly, and it's like, okay, anyone who disagrees with me, I'm just going to start using some of these terms, right? I'm talking about, people who actually speak in a hurtful way and who say, openly racist things, openly sexist things, openly hurtful things that are just divisive, right? And the mistake that the free speech crowd makes is they kind of use free speech, when it gets taken too far, is they kind of use free speech as a defense of harmful speech, right? So it's like, someone who is just openly racist, who's saying like, a particular group of people is inferior. Yeah, they may have the right to say that, but that is not a justification. That does not make it right. Just because you can say something doesn't mean you should say something. And this is the mistake that some people who take free speech ideology to an extreme make, is they use it to justify. And just because you have the right to does not mean you should, right? It's like, if I see someone who's very overweight and I go up to them and I'm just start saying like, oh, you're so fat, it's like, okay, what I'm saying may be factually correct, but that doesn't mean I'm right. That doesn't mean I'm morally right in what I'm saying. And I've noticed that a lot of people who push free speech really hard, they speak in very divisive ways, right? They'll use language which is very inflammatory. And this is kind of why they get clicks, because they're just kind of trying to push the boundaries. And, again, it just comes down to, is that really right? Like, yes, you have the right to do it, but that doesn't make what you're saying enlightened. So, I feel like people who push free speech, who that's like their whole thing, they'll say something super inflammatory, and then they'll be like, yeah, but like technically I'm correct. Like, think about it, like I'm not wrong. It's like, okay, like, it's not about literally whether you're right or not. It's about like, is what you're saying adding value? Is what you're saying bringing people together? Or is what you're saying just tearing us apart? Like, yeah, you might be technically correct. And I think that, so again, we've kind of looked at how when sensitivity gets taken too far, this causes problems. This causes censorship, cancel culture, authoritarianism. Everyone kind of feels like they have to walk on eggshells. We don't have a healthy exchange of ideas. But at the same time, when free speech becomes our God, we use it to justify harmful language, right? But now, both of these sides also have advantages, right? So the more liberal side of sensitivity, what are the advantages of that? Like, what does a healthy manifestation of that look like? Well, a healthy manifestation of this looks like, just because you're right doesn't mean you're right. Okay, like, if, again, to use the example of if someone is very overweight, they weigh 300 pounds, and I go up to them and I'm like, hey, you're so fat. Just because I'm right does not mean I'm right in saying that. Also, on the sensitivity side, the wisdom of silence and just understanding the power of words, that words are powerful. How many relationships have been destroyed because somebody said the wrong thing? This is the thing, like, words can't always be taken back. Words can destroy a relationship. Words can destroy a career opportunity. Words, relationship, could be romantic, it could be a friendship. Words can get you in legal trouble. Words can often cause violence in a certain sense. Not that words justify violence, but words are powerful. Words create reality, and just because you have free speech, an intelligent person is not just flying off at the mouth in the name of free speech because they're allowed to, right? An intelligent person chooses their words carefully, right? Understands words have consequences. Words are powerful. Words create reality. Your words literally create reality. So choose them carefully. But on the other hand, what are the advantages of having a society with free speech? What does a healthy manifestation of this look like? Well, a healthy manifestation of this looks like we have to have healthy debate on topics. We can't just censor people who we disagree with. We have to allow for opposing viewpoints. In general, I think we do want a small government as it comes to speech, right? Do we really want the government in the business of saying, no, you can't say that? I think that's a slippery slope. I think we do want small government, especially in this regard. We do want a society with freedom in it, and we do want the ability to make jokes, right? So it's like, I personally love offensive comedy, right? Like, all my favorite comedians are super offensive. Louis C.K., Dave Chappelle, George Carlin are probably my three favorite comedians. All these comedians say things that are offensive, right? And a lot of times liberals don't like this, but I think this is one good point about the free speech side, is that, I think comedy is a good thing, and comedians need freedom to push bounds. And the other thing is that when comedians are allowed to joke about offensive topics, this is often actually cathartic for people, because we're so used to being serious all the time. It's like it allows us to just chill a little bit, again, the vast majority of politicians, podcasters, everyone is so afraid of one side of this that they just run all the way to the other side. People are so afraid and mad about political correctness, cancel culture, that they're like, I'm just going all in over here. Or on the other hand, people are so upset with things like hurtful language, harassment, divisiveness, that they're like, I'm just going all the way over here, right? But I think the enlightened perspective, which I know that probably sounds a little arrogant, but the enlightened perspective is to say we need a healthy integration of both of these. We need to take the wisdom of silence, the wisdom of choosing your words carefully, of being selective about what you say, of, if it's not helping someone, don't say it. But we also need a free society where we have healthy debate, opposing viewpoints, freedom, comedy, and small government, especially as it applies to speech. So, and again, this is an example of the integration and reconciliation of apparent opposites. And I think that, in spiritual circles these days, a lot of people are just like, are promoting sort of like a non-dual worldview. But I think there's actually a lot of ancient cultures which actually believed in a dualistic worldview, where they believed that fundamentally reality is the union of opposing forces, masculine and feminine, up and down, dark and light, and that if we actually understand duality dualistically, we see that dualities must be integrated and reconciled. And if we simply just look at it as non-dual, it's like the conversation is kind of over. But when we understand that, a healthy person is able to integrate seemingly opposing duality, sides of a duality. And I think this is what all these, red pillars get wrong about masculinity, is that they're like, well, what men want seems to be at odds with what women want. So men should just go their own way and just basically get theirs, right? But the response to that is, yes, there is an apparent contradiction between masculinity and femininity. That's true. But an enlightened person finds ways to reconcile that. And that's what anyone who's in a healthy relationship does, right? It's not about men and women are the same. It's about they're different, but let's figure out a way to navigate those differences, right? Like free speech, choosing your words carefully. It seems contradictory, but it's actually not. Masculinity and femininity seem contradictory, but they're actually not. In reality, when you integrate these two things which seem contradictory, that's actually the path to enlightenment. That's what sacred duality is. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe, hit the like button, leave a comment below, and I will talk to you in the next video. All right?